AusMumpreneur TV. Today we're talking to the inspirational Kate Weiss from Table of Plenty, a small business with a big heart. What started as a very personal mission, Table of Plenty products are now not only sold in Coles and Woolworths, but exported to 6 countries, and the company turns over $10 million a year. In this episode, Georgia Main talks to Kate about growing a business, how to take it to the next level, and dealing with a major department store or supermarket.
Well, welcome, Kate. Tell us a little bit about how Table of Plenty began.
Sure. Table of Plenty, talk about it as a bit of an inside journey. When I had my first daughter, she was born with a disability, and I was 28 at the time, and it was a real shock, obviously, to my system. And I think during those first few years, I went into a pretty dark place in myself. She wasn't rolling over at 6 months. She wasn't smiling. We didn't know what was wrong with her. And nothing can prepare you for the trauma of that kind of thing coming into your life. And previously I'd been in a job where I was working in sales and marketing, and I found myself at home with Amy. And kind of my world, I suppose, just really stopped and collapsed around me. And Table of Plenty was really born out of me looking inside and wanting to reignite my passion for life and to also see a way forward into the future. So that was kind of the spark of Table of Plenty. And for me, that came from wanting to reconnect to my creativity. I kind of sat there in the dark moments, and when I looked inside, I thought, what was it that kind of gave me joy, gave me life, something where I felt I could flare. And I looked back in my childhood, and I just saw I'd always been a creative person. I learnt violin when I was young, from the age of 5, and I was always the kid who was going into the garden and making stuff, beads, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's really was me wanting to reconnect to my creativity. And the reason I wanted to do that was that, I needed to give something back to Amy while I was being her mother. I couldn't be depressed and look after her.
Yeah, find a way out.
Exactly.
Wow. So have you always considered yourself an entrepreneur?
No, definitely not. It was something that I think I had to put the right language on it. So after I'd been, the reason I got into food was the creativity, and I love being in the kitchen, getting my hands dirty, creating things out of flavours. And I did a lot of travelling, and that really I caught the bug of food and different cultures and flavours, and I did a lot of research into nutrition and into food. And I suppose I found myself in that creative process, creating products, making products, things that I believed in, things with the ingredients I wanted. And then I suddenly thought, well, how does that sit with entrepreneur? My vision of an entrepreneur is, Richard Branson or something like that. And then I realized, no, actually, I am, because what I saw is in the business community that it's the artistic types who are generally the entrepreneurs. So it's kind of, they're the creators. We make something out of nothing. And that's really in the business world, an entrepreneur is somebody who creates something out of nothing. So once I kind of put that together in my head, then I thought, no, I am. But I kind of call myself more, I suppose, a conscious entrepreneur, because for me, it was always about much more than just the business. It was to do with being true to yourself. It was to do with wanting to give back to the community. It was to do with a lot more things than just setting up a business and
selling
making
a product.
It successful.
Yeah.
I have to say, some of the buyers have been amazing. They've just, as a small company, you need somebody to open the door for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably a bit harder now than it was, even 8 years ago when we started with the Dukas.
And how did that change so previously, before then, you were sort of dealing, I guess, with a lot smaller quantities and numbers. How did that change your, the distribution process? What did you have to get your heads around to make sure, because you can't say to a supermarket, I don't have enough product, can you? That's not really an option.
Well, that was some of the challenges. The challenges, I remember when we first put the Dukkha on the shelf with Woolworths, being young, naive, new suppliers, they said, you need 6 weeks to hold 6 weeks worth of stock. And we were like, okay, no problem. So we roasted all these nuts, and we made, there were tins, so you're storing all these tins.
Yeah.
We roasted all these nuts, we crushed them, we blended them, we had everything packed, 6 weeks worth of stock sitting there. And we didn't realise that it doesn't work like that that you really need to run on a just enough, just in time kind of process.
Right.
And this stock sat because it takes a while for things to get onto the shelf, and then people need to know it's there, and then your orders don't, it's not like you put your first order and then your second one comes immediately. You always have to wait a little bit till all the shelves get filled, and so on.
Yeah.
Plus, the forecast that the buyer gave us wasn't necessarily what was going to happen. We didn't realise that. Plus, we had a competitor on the shelves we didn't understand about merchandising, where there are actually people looking after your product on the shelf. So we really got in trouble in the first few months, and it nearly took us out.
Right.
But we got through that, and so we had to learn from scratch. We built our own tools to learn how to manage the stock, how to forecast, to make sure that we just had the right amount, so we keep it fresh, because you don't want it sitting in your warehouse for 3 months before you ship it, because it's not as fresh as if you make it and ship it.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things to learn.
Steep learning curve.
Yeah, huge, huge.
What would you say, from your dealings with the supermarkets, when you came to them, what were their expectations on you? What did they expect you to know and be able to deliver?
In some ways it's very simple. If you're going to present a product to them and they're going to take it, they expect you to have what you said, exactly that, enough stock in the DC on time. The DC means the distribution centre. So you have to be able to ship into the warehouse what they want at the time they want in full. And they don't like it if you're late, if anything goes wrong, which is fair enough, because they're relying on suppliers to make sure they have stock so it can be on the shelves.
Yeah.
They expect the product obviously to be up to Australian standards. You have to have all the certifications, so you can't just make it in your kitchen and send it to Woolies. You need to have the right packaging format, so you have to have the barcodes. I mean, these are all things we had no idea about. You had to learn how to make a barcode. What is a barcode? Where does it come from? There's 1,000,001 things that they expect, which are kind of normal for the supermarkets to deal with. But the main thing is you have to have the product on time. And obviously they have also an expectation of how much money they want to make out of a product. So you need to be able to meet that. You can't say, well, I can only give you this much margin or whatever. There's a certain expectation, and you need to make it work within that.
And when you first went into the supermarkets, what happened with sales? Was it just, an amazing growth rate then, or how did it work? Did it take a little bit of time to settle in? What happened?
Oh, definitely. And it's not called FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods, for nothing, because the landscape changes around you all the time. So we've had products that have gone well, products that have started well, and products can have a life cycle, so they can do well and then they start to tail off. We've had other ones that we didn't know if they were going to, and they did. So it's a changing landscape, and we always look to be innovating and bring in the next new trend, or the next new growth, and especially in health and well-being ingredients and so on. So it's a lot to do with, as a small company, one of the things that's I think most difficult is to get that marketing reach, because we don't do advertising on television. We can't do like a Kellogg's on it. We can't, you turn on your TV and Kellogg's is there. We can't afford to do that. That's a huge amount of money.
What do you do?
Word of mouth, sampling, and just also to just gradually educate consumers that they really need to support small Aussie companies like us, because we're there. We just can't make as much noise necessarily.
Yeah.
And
And in terms of that whole negotiating process, with the buyers, was there much room that you can negotiate? Do the big guys pretty much just tell you this is how it is and can you deliver? And if not?
No, there's not a lot of room for negotiation. Yeah. There isn't. It's you have to know what your strength is and what your point of difference is with the products. So you can't just come in and say, I've got a vanilla milk and I'm going to bring in another vanilla milk. They'll say, why should I put another vanilla milk on the shelf? What's the difference? Why is it there? What's its reason? Why people are going to buy it? So you need to be very clear about what you're bringing to the supermarkets, and what's your philosophy behind it. Why is it different? Why are people going to want it? So the market research behind it.
Very important.
Yeah.
So has there been anything unexpected or something that you didn't realise would be part of this process that you've learnt along the way?
Yeah, there's a few things. One of the things is that, as I mentioned before, we didn't know that there were actually people who look after your product on the shelf. So in the early days, we used to kind of go into stores and, we thought the stores just put things on the shelf and they look after themselves. But we found that, our things there was somebody in front of us, or the stock was pushed to the back, or there weren't any labels on the front. And we actually found out there's something called merchandising, where it's actually you pay a whole team to go into the supermarket and to look after your product and make sure the tickets are on there and so on. That was one thing. Another thing we found out was that your distribution in your stores can change. So, for instance, when we started early on, there weren't as good systems as well as there are now, but you know that your product's been taken into, let's say, 500 stores, and then we didn't realise that it actually had been reduced or increased to 600 stores or 400, so suddenly your forecast wasn't the same. Because it wasn't like the product was going on shelf or being taken off shelf. They just changed how many stores it was in. So we didn't, all those kind of things we kind of found out on the way. Yeah. The hard way.
The hard way. Yeah.
Like we'd suddenly go, how come our orders are more, or how come our orders are less? And then we'd find out that our store distribution had changed, or things like that.
So what is a typical day for you? Obviously now you've grown in size from when you first began. What's a typical day for you? You focus more on product development now. What do you do?
Okay. I get up early. I try to. No, I do. I need that time before the day starts to myself, either to do exercise or go for a walk or spend some time in meditation, things like that, to really get myself fresh for the day. Then I get the kids off to school and I go into work. And my main focuses are on the sales and marketing. So the marketing side, a lot of social media. I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements. One of the things about Table of Plenty is that we're really... we call it Life of Plenty. It's really the philosophy behind Table of Plenty, and that's something that was one of the major drivers when we were starting Table of Plenty, is to actually bring the learnings and the personal development aspect of how you can be true to yourself and make your life work. So that's a whole area that beyond the food, we call it Nourishing You for Life, starting with good food and moving into all sorts of other areas. Yeah. So that's really something we're working to in terms of courses, speaking engagements and so on. And the other thing I oversee is the product development. So really seeing what foods people are needing to support themselves in their journey towards health and well-being. So we're all about natural food integrity, ingredients. Yeah.
Perfect.
Just like you'd make in your kitchen, but yeah.
And so your mission when you first started was to provide for Amy and to be there for her.
Yeah.
How does it feel now looking back that you are able to do all that?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I see that as part of the puzzle. It's definitely, I suppose, a personal thing that obviously Amy has a disability and she needs to be looked after we've gone. So that's a personal aspect. The second aspect was definitely working in something that I was passionate about, so wanting to be in that creative place, what we call the point of plenty, because if you're doing something you love, there's always a lot of it. It's not a struggle, it's not something where you have to tear yourself out of bed to kind of say I have to go and do this. So that's really the point of plenty. And the third thing was that I wanted to make sure that we gave back to the community. So a disability, Amy's not the only one who's got a disability. So really giving back to the community and providing, creating work for people with a disability was part of it as well. So it's kind of all those things together. And in terms of securing Amy's future, that's how long is a piece of string? Yeah. Anyone who has a child with a disability will tell you that it's huge. It's a huge, also financial commitment, and we're on the way, but it's a long way to go still.
Yeah. And so in terms of you're now exporting a lot of your product overseas, I mean, how did that come about and where's it going to?
Well, I suppose that Australia is really known for its integrity of its food. It's it's clean, it's green, it's got good food standards, so that's a really good basis. And I think that our products have gone, they're now in Asia, in the Middle East, looking now into Europe. We had some inquiries from the US. So there are a lot of different places looking at our products and exporting. Yeah.
And just finally, Kate, in terms of if someone's watching this and thinking, you know, I'd love to get my products into, you know, a department store or the supermarkets, just a couple of tips. What would you say to them to, you know, I guess it's to get in past that phone call and be able to present?
So first of all, pick up the phone. Don't be scared of cold calling. It's all right. You know, it can work. The worst you can get is a no. Second thing I'd say is know your product, know your point of difference, know why it should be on the shelf. What's the reason for it being on the shelf? And just be passionate. Be passionate. If you're passionate about your product and you believe in your vision of what your company is and what you're trying to build, then you can make it happen. It'll happen. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on all your success, and look forward to hearing what's next. Thank you.